Caroline Dowdy, EDIS 1300 Synthesis Project. Question 1. We have an increasing number of English language learners in our school. How would you modify your instruction to promote their oral language development? Answer. It is increasingly important to accommodate the ESL student in your classroom. Here are a variety of ways to incorporate an ESL student into your class. 1. Incorporate pictures. When working with word sorts, if the ESL student has trouble with reading and segmenting the English language, provide a picture. Also, allow the ESL student to draw pictures when necessary. This can easily be done when working with a read aloud, when students are asked to predict and work on comprehension. The ESL student can draw a picture to better explain his or her prediction. 2. Use culturally familiar materials. Use some materials that match the cultural background of the ESL student. It is hard for students to relate to activities and a text that always correlates to a white American middle-class background. ESL students are better able to participate when working with cultural familiar materials. It is especially a good idea to use culturally familiar text when assessing an ESL's reading ability. In addition, allow students to use both English and his or her native language in the classroom. Putting down students for using a native language hinders their language growth and may discourage oral language practice. And lastly, make connections in all areas. Don't just rely on incorporating culturally familiar text. Also, bring in a variety of writing activities so ESL students have the opportunity to experiment and possibly better relate one writing activity to a culturally familiar activity. 3. Remain open. Every culture uses language in a different way. Remember that the cultural norms for the English language may differ from other countries. For example, in the United States, when talking, we take turns and look each other in the eye. This may not be the norm for other languages. Therefore, remember that each language has standards that differ. 4. Provide detailed instructions. Provide detailed instructions. For example, when giving the instructions, clean up your individual space, that ESL student may not know what individual means. Therefore, it is important to provide definitions or support for words that some assume an ESL learner would know. Also, when talking with ESL students, be sure to speak and respond in full sentences with correct grammar. Therefore, students are more likely to model the correct speech. Question 2. Comprehension activities and instruction are very different for kindergarten and second grade. Would you describe the approaches you would take for instruction for those two grades and let us know why those approaches are developmentally appropriate? Answer. When discussing kindergarten and second grade, it is important to discuss the 5 to 7 shift. 5-year-old kindergartners are learning to read, while 7-year-old second graders are reading to learn. Let's discuss kindergarten first. 5-year-olds are building vocabulary knowledge along with knowledge of word and text structure. Kindergarten comprehension is about comprehension acquisition, where the students are learning comprehension skills modeled by the teacher. Therefore, to improve kindergarten comprehension, I would recommend using read-alouds. Read-alouds allow students to incorporate prior knowledge, relate to real-world experiences, along with making predictions. Read-alouds are so important in kindergarten because the child is an active participant in discussing in a group the meaning of words. Therefore, as a kindergarten teacher, you should designate sufficient time in the daily curriculum for read-alouds. Select books that are engaging and encompass a variety of genres. Be sure to engage the students with interactive questions that help teach skills that students will later need in comprehension strategies. 7-year-olds are past the stage where speaking is a primary focus. 7-year-olds now have a concept of word and are able to participate in comprehension activities individually and in a group. In second grade, there is a focus on listening skills, group interaction, and drama. Teachers are now presenting information with 2 to 4 step directions, so it is important that children are able to listen to the teacher and comprehend those steps. Also, at this stage, it is more about comprehension instruction rather than comprehension acquisition. Second graders are able to question text in smaller groups where students listen to others to form and share opinions. Besides small group, second graders are able to work individually as they now understand those comprehension strategies that were modeled by the teacher in the first and second grade. For examples, questions such as predicting and clarifying. Therefore, regarding approaches to develop comprehension in second grade, I would focus on drama and students interacting with the text and predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing the text. Question 3. We have openings in preschool and in first grade. Would you please describe how you would address word level instruction for both those grades? Are there any specific techniques or programs you feel should be introduced? Answer. In preschool, there is more a focus on the alphabet. The word work, therefore, is emphasized with alphabet awareness. For example, a sort could consist of students organizing alphabet letters compared to other symbols. This helps the student understand that each letter has its own shape and name. Another focus in preschool word study is the recognition and creation of rhyme. Preschool students enjoy moving letters around and making their own rhyme. For example, the name game. Also, preschoolers are learning that letters and numbers are different forms of prints and learn the purpose of each. The students begin to recognize up to 10 letters of the alphabet by the end of preschool and can recognize the letters in their name and begin to write them, especially the first letter. Once they learn the alphabet, they know that print is read. At the end of preschool, students can start attending to beginning sounds. This is later enhanced and elaborated on in kindergarten. A way to address word study in preschool is teaching and learning the alphabet song and learning to write the letters. In contrast, word study in first grade focuses on letter sounds and the manipulation that can be made by putting certain letters together. At this point, students are learning the basic sounds letters make in addition to other sounds the letters can make. For example, the long O versus the short O, along with blends and digraphs. In first grade, it is imperative to provide differentiated word work instruction. There are a variety of levels as students know different letter sounds. This was evident in my language block field placement as some students were working on the long versus short O sounds, while the other group worked on E drop and doubling as they had already mastered the long versus short vowel sounds. First graders can spell 3 to 4 letter words, blend and segment phonemes, and can count the number of syllables. Regarding instruction techniques, I would incorporate lots of word sorts and activities that focus on letters and letter sound patterns. Other resources include the PALS website as it aids in activities that correspond to the PALS assessment. Also, a useful book is the Word Identification Strategies book by Barbara Fox, as it includes example word sorts for a wide variety of abilities.